setting standards, you know, you would have felt it in the session, and the guys watching, when they watch YouTube, they'll see the standards that I set from the very start of my sessions. Down, stay down, that's it. Oh, better. Good, good. If you set those standards and make sure you hold true to those standards, you'll have better players. Some energy at it, huh? Earn your drink, come on, push! But also, you'll create a culture around your coaching. Professionalism, effort, you know, behaviour. I set those standards, and if they don't meet those standards, I'm pretty hard on them.
Vandaag ga je luisteren naar de podcast tussen mij en Alex Heinz. En de podcast hebben we opgenomen net nadat ik een hele sessie met Alex had gehad. En ik kan je vertellen, dat was echt een van de zwaarste sessies die ik ooit heb gehad op de tennisbaan. Ik denk dat we allemaal altijd iets meer kunnen geven dan we daadwerkelijk doen. En dat had ik ook ervaren met hem. Maar waarom wilde ik met Alex op de baan staan? Hij gaat er in de podcast meer over vertellen, maar hij heeft veel ervaring en onder andere jaren gewerkt voor Tennis Australia. Waarin hij de allerbeste spelers die we nu ook op tv zien, die uit Australië komen, training heeft gegeven. Waaronder Alex de Minaur en Nick Kyrgios. Dat zijn natuurlijk nogal namen en daarom was ik heel benieuwd naar zijn verhalen, naar de manier van training geven en zijn visie op tennis. Nou, wil jij progressie boeken in je spel? Dan is dit de podcast voor jou. Dus vergeet niet even te volgen of te abonneren. En dan gaan we nu naar de podcast. Alright guys, welcome to another podcast episode of Tennis the World. And I'm here with Alex Heinz. And I am actually really tired because you set a good standard for the tennis session we just had. And thank you very much for being on the show.
No, thanks for having me. It's fun. Yeah, I was always striking things, so Mum got me into the sport. And I played a lot as a kid and I was okay. I was never good enough. Wow, we lived on a farm. I had to drive 100 kilometres to get a tennis lesson. Which, I mean, in Holland's a long way, but in Australia it's still pretty long. But yeah, and I started coaching when I was 14 at our local club. And then I started coaching it for other coaches. And then the next town on asked me to be the tennis coach. And so I started coaching there when I was, might have even been 17, because I had to get off the bus and then walk to the tennis centre. By the time I was 17, I had a licence. But yeah, so I was running my own club, and then I went to university and I studied sports science there. And I deliberately did it in Canberra where the AIS was, which is like our Institute of Sport, the Australian Institute of Sport, because I wanted to like be able to do practical stuff there whilst going to uni. And then I coached while I was there as well. And so I got to know a lot of the people there. And when I finished university, I did an honours in reactive agility in tennis, which is where this fascination with footwork came. But yeah, I had a passion for tennis and I loved it. And then I wanted to work for Tennis Australia, and I wanted to travel the world, get paid to do it, work with the best players, you know, Australia has and the world has. So I just was persistently bugging people at Tennis Australia and at the AIS. Hey, can I come and do some free work, observation work? I went to the ACT, so the Canberra Academy of Sport, and I used to do volunteer hours. I'd go there at 5:30 in the morning and stay there for 2 hours, then I'd go to work and then go to uni, just so I could get experience and knowledge. And eventually I just got an opportunity to coach and do it. Well, I started with S&C, with Tennis Australia, and then they wanted another coach, an assistant high performance coach, so I moved into a role which was exciting. I was both, so I was a dual role. I was strength and conditioning and tennis. And it was with the ACT National Academy. So they were the kids who were the best in the ACT. And then I moved into the AIS, and I was a physical performance coach with the AIS, and they used me mainly as a physical performance coach, but also they used me as a tennis coach on the road because I had that skill as well. Yeah. And so for the next 8 years, I was with Tennis Australia doing that. And then then I went into the private market, and I started my own business, Team Movement.
Yeah, the team movement was something I was. I just experienced your knowledge over the years, and to be honest, I was like, okay, so we are going to start and train footwork. It will be really technical. It was, but it was so tough for the body. I didn't expect that. So, but it was really good, and people should check out the YouTube video, of course. But something I want to have a deep dive on is the part of educating yourself as a coach, because when I hear your story, you're saying that you're going to Tennis Australia or another facility and just saying, can I do something for free? That's actually asking, can I learn?
Yeah.
And can I experience?
Yeah.
I think a lot of coaches will listen to this.
Yeah.
What is your advice of educating yourself as a coach, or yourself for just becoming a better coach?
Yeah. Find someone who's better than you and just go and spend time with them. Now, good coaches, if you show respect and you say, look, I don't want to interrupt you, I just want to watch, will often see the initiative and they'll go, this person's got a bit about them. Yeah, sure. And say, look, I'm not going to steal your coaching, I just want to learn.
Yeah.
All right? I just want to learn off you. And if you donate your hours and you invest in learning off them, they're normally quite responsive to helping you. I was lucky. I had some very, very good mentors. And like, for instance, my first high performance mentor was the guy who coached Kyrgios, Todd Larkham. And he made a lot of national champions out of a very small state. And I was lucky enough to work with him, learn off him. And I had two amazing mentors in strength and conditioning. And one of them was the one I went and donated time with. Right? And he turned out to be a lifelong mate who helped him and I develop this concept and this understanding of footwork and movement. But it was all come from me donating my time and him saying, you know what, this kid's got a bit of nous, a bit of, passion. And if you show passion and desire to learn, then people will let you. But I also I was fascinated by many different things. Like I studied how people absorb information. So like neuro-linguistics, because that's what coaching is. It's just tapping into someone else's learning patterns or vocal patterns or how they absorb information. Like I studied hypnosis. Now that's how people subconsciously take on information. Like I didn't learn how to hypnotize people, I just studied the theory of it. I did put one person under, but they were very easy to put under. But it basically teaches you how to change your language patterns so people are more responsive to what you're presenting to them verbally or physically. And so you learn the patterns of speech and you modify your patterns of speech depending on the needs of the athlete. So I learnt that because I was just fascinated by that.
But why was you so fascinated by it? Was there some event, what happens? That
my mentor was learning it. Yeah. The guy who was at the academy, the ACT Academy of Sport, he was the guy who I developed footwork and movement with. He was into it and he explained how it can be beneficial. And I feel like that there was lots of elements. Like I was learning speed, agility, strength and conditioning, tennis. I was donating as many hours as I could to learn. And it's a cheap way to do it too. You don't have to pay for courses, although I did pay for a lot of courses. If you can see value in something, or you see that that's something I don't know, but it will definitely make me a better coach, and it's not going to cost a lot of money, it's going to cost effort, just put in the effort. Because at the end of the day, it's going to accelerate. It's just like a player, right? If you don't want to go down and do a basket of serves to improve your serve, you're not going to get any better. But that's effort. Right? But if you show effort, time, and you invest in things that you're passionate about learning, and you make sure the people who are very good at what they do see that, those people who are very good at what they do are like, I want him to work for me. Or I want him to, he speaks to other people and says, he's good. You want a good coach? You want a good fit? You need to hire this guy.
Yeah. Probably the good, or probably, definitely the good coaches are the coaches that show their passion and their hard work.
Yeah.
And not saying that they are good, but showing that they are willing to do something before they get something out of it themselves. Yeah.
When you chat to all those, like, I learnt this young, but it still took me a long time to develop my knowledge. All the older coaches who are real experienced and very, very good, they're like, I'm always learning. I never stop learning. And you've got to have that attitude too, even though you might be very, very good at what you do. Yeah. And I consider myself very, very good at what I do. But you've still got to be open to learn and to have other people's opinions and be challenged, have your opinions challenged. I think in our society now, like, no one likes getting challenged. And people get defensive and they don't like, I'm like, yeah, challenge anything that I have.
Yeah.
And let's chat about it, you know, because it's the best way to get better. And your idea doesn't always work with this athlete or that athlete. You need to be adaptable. But for me, it was all about, I was very eager, I was very passionate, I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I put that towards learning my craft. and people saw it, and I got opportunities, and that led to other opportunities, and it led to my dream job.
Yeah, that's great. So people are maybe, a lot of people maybe know you, so a lot of people may not know you, and they are thinking, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So you've worked with a lot of great players from Australia. You are a specialist in footwork, movement, but also a tennis coach. But can you explain yourself what team movement is?
Team movement.
And what you do?
Well, team movement is all about me sort of leaving a legacy and me having an impact on the world. You know, I've been coaching for many, many years, and I've done pretty well for myself, and I've loved doing it. But I want to impact more people, and I want to help more people. And I call it the ripple effect. If I can, you know, put a drop in the water and help a coach learn about athletic development, footwork, and fitness, that ripple, they'll help all these other athletes throughout their whole career. And that ripple helps more and more and more people. You know, if I have a kid who jumps on my Team Movement Elite membership and develops their footwork and their fitness, all right, as they grow and get older, I'm helping them. Right? And if I get more and more members, I help more and more people. All right? And let's say a coach gets on there and does it, they're going to help hundreds and hundreds of people. So team movement is all about having an impact on the world, making better coaches, better athletes. And so for me, that's super rewarding, because I got to a stage where I was like, I can only help so many people. You know, and I was so busy. Like, for instance, at KDV Sport, I was flat out. And I was having to say no a lot to people. But then I looked at it like, well, my wife got pregnant as well. And then I was like, you know what, how can I make a lifestyle where I can help hundreds and hundreds of people, but at the same time be able to spend a lot of time with my family and not have to coach in front of them. So I created Team Movement. And Team Movement is all about video-based online training and learning to try and improve coaches and try and improve players to be the best that they can possibly be, no matter what their level is. You know, no matter what their coaching level is, no matter what the tennis player's level is, it's about getting the best out of their body and improving them to reach their potential, whatever that may be.
And it's focused on movement, on footwork.
Fitness, yeah. Footwork and like athletic development. How do we build an athletic tennis player? You know, all those elements that go into producing a player. Yeah. And I think my big belief is tennis coaches spend more time with a player than anyone else. You know, so I'm all about improving a tennis coach's knowledge, which is why I created this education course on athletic development. You know, teaching coaches how to understand speed, agility, warm-ups, recovery, injury prevention, fitness, all these elements, because they have a bit more of an impact than one personal trainer session a week.
Yeah.
So
the coaches, you already explained that how a coach can improve their knowledge and their skills to help other players. One way of doing it is starting with listening to this podcast, maybe checking out the video, but signing up to your program. There are ways how you can improve it. But then, so the level of a lot of tennis coaches is not, their standard is not where you want it to be, right? What do you see happening in real life with coaches, tennis coaches, and what do you want to see them doing?
So something that I probably see a bit is tennis coaches, and this is just the world, so I'm not just highlighting tennis coaches, a bit too nice to their athletes. And I mean that in a very professional way. I don't mean like you've got to be like an absolute drill sergeant, you know, but setting standards, you know, you would have felt it in the session. And the guys watching, when they watch YouTube, they'll see the standards that I set from the very start of my sessions. And if you set standards and you adhere to them, so you make sure your athletes meet the standards of effort, you know, putting in, working hard, all those sorts of things. If you set those standards and make sure you hold true to those standards, you'll have better players, no matter what their level is, and more people want to come to you. Right? But also you'll create a culture around your coaching. So I'm a big fan of culture. I have a massive, I'm massive on culture on court, but also in the gym when I have athletes in the gym, on professionalism, effort, you know, behavior. I set those standards, and if they don't meet those standards, I'm pretty hard on them. They get a friendly warning to start, but if they don't, I'm pretty hard on them. And I think our kids are treated too nice now, and so when they get to situations on court which are hard, they can't deal with it. But we need to train them to be resistant You know,
So
to resilient.
But what is the behavior of the coach? So the coach is saying when it's getting hard for the kid that it's okay and just relax, or what?
Yeah,
what is
grab a
something-
drink, have a rest. Not,
Yeah.
no man, you can do this.
Yeah. So there was one drill we were doing. You were feeding the ball, and I was working on the running behind. Do you say that way? Running behind the backhand?
Yeah,
To
running
the
around
forehand?
your backhand. Hit your
Right,
forehand, yeah.
To the forehand. And there were some moments that my footwork was a little lazy.
Yeah.
You were still nice, but
Yeah.
it was like, come on, you can do it, let's go.
Yeah.
That standard is there.
Yeah.
And so another coaches are maybe too easily saying, it's okay,
Yeah.
just saying nothing, and
Say nothing.
that's the level.
Collect their cash.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But when you do set those standards and you create that culture, people want to work with you. You know? And the kids improve. And some kids, like most kids, believe it or not, love it. They, like a lot of kids come off my sessions, some of the hardest sessions I've done on them, and they thank me for it and they're smiling. Because they know they've put in the work. And a lot of kids who want to be good at tennis are driven. So feed that drive. Don't take your foot off the pedal with it. Feed them that drive. They love it. They love to be challenged. And when they get on court in a match, they'll be challenged at some stage. But they'll be used to it.
In the session you were talking about building the habits, and that every session, every week, every day again, year after year, you will see that coming back in matches.
Yes.
Now you've worked with a lot of players. Maybe there are some like stories where you could see that happening, or maybe I'm wondering, are there some parts you experienced that you were setting these standards, but it was just not working with the player?
Yeah. And I stopped working with them.
Yeah.
I just spoke to their parents and said, look, I'm probably not the right coach for your young player. And I set the standards. And I said, yeah, look, they're not probably, you might be better with a recreational coach, or might be better going out with someone else, because the standards that I set, if you don't, and to be honest, and we spoke about this before I start working with a player, I chat to the parent and I chat to the player, and I say, in our sessions, you know, first off, you need to be here 10 minutes early to do your physical warm-up, because I don't start the session until you're warmed up, and I don't want to waste your money. So I come here and warm up, and all my players do that. Second is, you need to work hard and have a good attitude. And some days you're not going to be good, some days you're not, but you've got to try your best. And the parents, I set the standard, you're not on court, you're coming here to seek a professional. You don't sit in your children's classrooms. You don't sit, you don't tell your doctors what to do. Like, so it's the same sort of thing. I'm a professional at what I do, and I don't need you on court. So if you set the standards at the start, hopefully you never get to the stage where you've got to say, look, you're not meeting my standards, I'm sorry, I don't have to work with you. And it's only happened once, and I did it very gently. And just sort of suggested, the time wasn't working for me. I'm sorry, you might be better working with this coach. And to be honest, it was when I was starting at a new academy and I was trying to get lessons. So I had to take on probably someone who was the wrong fit for me, as in they weren't a performance kid, and they didn't want to be there. And so, well, if you don't want to be here, go. You know.
Yeah, and that's also a part probably where your standards are there because you like that way of training as well. You are dedicated.
Yeah.
And if that standard is not matching with the player, you can say, okay, but then you're saying no to yourself, like you're not happy on the court.
Yeah.
And it's always, so that's something I talked about with Nelson and Reza as well, is they can be so funny, they are hilarious.
Yeah.
But how do they do it to teach the kids?
Yeah.
Well, they, sometimes they need to be a little bit harder probably, sometimes they are the funny guys.
Yeah.
But they are working with more recreational
Yeah,
players.
and that's perfect
so
for
that's
them.
good.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm working with a different one. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like a big meanie. Like, you'll see, I'm kind of fun, but once the boundaries...
We had a fun session.
Yeah, it was fun.
But the fun for me and for you is also in working hard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's the thing, teaching a kid to enjoy working hard and rewarding them by working hard, because I'm a bit of a goof sometimes, right? When a kid's doing well, I'm like passionate, like, yes, that's right, mate, well done. And I'll joke and stuff, but when they go past the boundaries of my standards, I make sure they know. And it's important to give kids boundaries. If they don't have boundaries, they don't understand, how far to push it, or they have no direction. You know, so for me, it's really important to teach them as a human too, like be resilient, but don't break boundaries and work hard. Now, even if they don't take on tennis, they go and be a lawyer, an accountant, an architect. Be diligent and work hard. You're going to be successful. You know, so it's a life skill as well, I consider it.
Who did teach you this? Like, are your parents or somebody else in your surroundings when you were younger that made you who you are today?
Apparently, I've just been driven a lot. A very driven person. Yeah. So I was an athlete.
Born that way?
Yeah, I don't know. I was brought up on a farm. And so on a farm, there's no excuses. Like if cows don't have water or whatever animals you have don't have water, you can't just say, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. You know, there's a busted pipe and it's 9 p.m. Dad and I are going out there with the car and a light and we're digging up and fixing the pipe or animals die. And so I think on a farm you build up this ability to be like, work's done when the work's done. You know, not when it gets dark or not when this happens. But also my parents, you know, we were brought up in a drought and my parents didn't have a lot of money. So they were like in a drought, which is where there's no rain.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, which is not good.
Yeah.
Right? And so they didn't have a lot of money. But my parents were like, okay, you want us to, you know, you're a good tennis player and I was good at athletics. And they're like, well, you want us to spend money to take you around and play and compete, then you better be fit. At least you can do is fitness. You live a long way from your tennis coach, you will be fit. And so I would run every day. You know, I'd run 4Ks, 6Ks as I got older, every single day. If I wanted to play tennis or serve or practice, I'd get on like my motorbike or get on my push bike, ride over the hill, 8 kilometres to my tennis courts, the country tennis courts, roll out the net, serve, change ends, serve, roll the net back up, get on my bike and ride back. Right, just have a serve. I tell this to my kids because they're players, because they, you know, their parents drive them around, do everything for them. I had a wall, like for me to practice, my dad put floorboards up against the hay shed wall, and I would hit against that. Right, and that was how I used to train. But if I didn't do all that, my parents wouldn't take me to the tournaments. Right, so I was pretty driven. But also, when you hang out, I just got really lucky. I got to hang out with all the best coaches in Australia. All right, when I worked at Tennis Australia. And all the successful ones set standards and were hard on their athletes. You know, and I learned that, so I'm sure I had some of it when I was younger, just internally. But the coaches I worked with who were good, tough. And so I was like, well, I need to be like that.
Yeah,
you know, put my own spin on it.
So standards were set when you were younger and with the coaches you work with. And that's something I experienced right away with you on court, which makes you the coach you are now. Like, you gotta work and we're gonna make progress. That's good. And so kids nowadays, like you're saying, and also the adult players, things are maybe too easy. Like we spoke about this and how it is in the Netherlands and also here in Australia compared to Spain or Brazil. Like you can see it in the eyes of the player and the athlete. They are more hungry. So how to change that with players? Is that something that's just like you had internally and that's it? Or is there some tweaks we can do with players?
I honestly believe in a team culture. You know, so I was really fortunate. I was part of a really good team at Tennis Australia for about 2 or 3 years, where we put 5 players into the top 100 in the world. And the culture was, there was a hierarchy. The really good players would challenge all the younger kids and set standards and show the standards in the gym and on court. The coaches would back up and we all had the same belief system.
That's so good.
It was so important. And that was when, you know, we had so many players, unbelievable players. Like we had Sam Groth, Thompson, O'Connell, Kubler, Kyrgios was even up there, Tomjanovic, Yamila Gardasova. And then we had all these up-and-comers like Akira Sandilands, Ollie Anderson, Priscilla Hon, Kim Birrell, Lizette Cabrera. There was even more. And they were all training together. But the culture was all about hard work, accountability, and the whole team was on board with it.
Same mission.
Same mission, same belief.
Hardworking.
And it was the coolest time of my career to be a part of. And we had amazing leaders. You know, Dirk Spitz was my mentor, head of strength and conditioning. Well, he was head in my area. And we had Brent Larkham as the head coach. And those two set standards, and they were hard, man. They were hard about it. You know, even if the kid was really good, you're tanking, as in giving up on court in matches, and you're not training hard, you're not going to tournaments. We're top 20 junior in the world, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We need to change this culture within you. So they put in behaviour management for poor behaviours. And it's simple stuff too, like this is a good one. I use this as an example. For instance, in the gym, you know, they're messing around in the gym. One girl particularly, I remember, was messing around in the gym. And she was a great girl. She just got too excited around in a group. And she was misbehaving in the gym and she was doing the wrong thing. And she'd been doing it too many times that I'd warned her, and I kicked her out. I said, you're out of the gym. She came back later. She was upset. And I was like, look, I'm doing this because I want you to be a better player. And I want to change the way you behave and your professionalism. And I said, but you have to give back to the environment. So you're going to vacuum the gym. And she was like, okay. And she vacuumed the gym, and then I came in and I said, this looks amazing. Thank you so much. You've made the environment better.
Yeah.
Now next time when you're in the gym, please keep your professionalism, stick to what you're doing, finish your program and get out. She never did it again. But she made the environment better.
What's the way of making sure that that player is getting more motivated by a situation like that, instead of, I was just having fun and now he's angry at me, or angry, he's so maybe another kid would have reacted like, oh, then I stop playing tennis or whatever.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so then,
they're never going to make it. Or, but the key is hard on them, then show them that you care. Yeah. So they're hard on them. Like on some boys, I've been extremely hard. One kid I can remember, I won't say his name, but he was very rude to a girl. And I was extremely hard because of what he said to her. It wasn't appropriate. And I booed him out of the gym, angry, ran on, like, didn't go outside of our centre, but was really annoyed. I found him, I sat down and said, look man, I really like you. I think you can be an amazing tennis player, but you're holding yourself back by doing stupid things.
Yeah.
And I said, if I didn't care about you as much, I wouldn't say anything. But because I care about you being the best version of yourself, I'm trying to show you that what's good and what's bad, and how to behave and how not to. And he was like, yeah, okay. I said, and then I, chat to him, can you understand why I did what I did? And then got him to explain it to me. He's like, yeah, I was really rude. And I said, so what are you going to do? He goes, I'll go and apologise to her and say I'm really sorry. And I was like, good, that's a start. And I said, but I don't want to see that sort of behaviour ever again. Yeah. And so
it's also explaining the why you are doing that.
That's the most important bit, and that you care about them.
Yeah.
Or else they think you don't care. But if someone's, a lot of kids are damaged too, Parents may have damaged them, or a younger coach, whatever. You need to show that you care about them and that you care about their future. Yeah. And once they get that investment, they'll invest back in you and do the right things. Because otherwise you're just a bully. Do you know what I mean?
That's a wonderful example, and I don't want to make this one about me, but I've got a great example about my mother when I was younger. Yeah. Just a thing about school. I was laying in bed. I think I was 10 or something, and having so much fun, telling a story about how school was that day. Yeah, we were having so much fun about the teacher, and we were just laughing about her all day. And my mother was like, "Oh, that must be so fun! Oh, wow, fantastic! Blah blah blah." But wait, how must your teacher have felt when all the kids were laughing about you? And then I was like, huh? Oh, yeah. And so she explained that to me, and I remember that still. Yeah. And that's that why. Oh yeah. So I forgot about that. Yeah. And that's a great, still something I think, something coaches can do better, or just parents or whatever, in every field of the world.
Yeah. And as coaches, we do have an impact.
Yeah.
I got lots of parents who, like I had a parent, for instance, Loretta Jones, who's Emerson Jones's mother, and Hayden Jones, who are both top 20 juniors. I worked with them when they were younger. Right? She is a strength and conditioning coach, and she's a triathlete, a silver medalist triathlete. Right? But she came to me to run their footwork and their fitness because she said, they don't listen to me, Alex.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I'm their parent, she doesn't listen to me, you're the expert, maybe you can get through to them. Yeah. And they listen to me Because I was their coach.
Yeah.
Because I'm a coach,
Yeah.
not a parent. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, coaches, we can have a big impact on how our kids behave.
Yeah.
You know, we probably spend the second most amount of time, you know, sometimes with the kid than the parent. You know, so we can contribute to them as humans, and we do play an important role with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh yeah, great. And when we dive into the topic of your expertise
yes,
on court, what did you see when you? That's actually a question of ET.
yeah.
I think that's a good one maybe to start off with. Is you noticed right away that I like to hit a forehand and you wanted to work on my forehand, but how did you see that? Why did you see it? And you talked about Europeans
Yeah,
liking to play.
yeah. I
with
mean,
forehand.
European males often are forehand dominant, or a lot of males are forehand dominant. But no, it was with your stance, your positioning on the court. You sat slightly to the backhand side,
yeah.
so you could have more of a forehand opportunity, and you had your feet and your hips turned towards the forehand. And for the first 7 balls, you hit forehands.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and so I was like, but I could have said from first ball, I think.
Yeah.
Just because of your comfort and your movement. And I've just seen thousands of players.
Yeah.
And I just was like, okay.
So you analyze the patterns and the movement of a player.
Yeah.
And where does that start with? Or where, and maybe for your own, I heard already in another podcast that you've watched so many other pro players on television analyzing how they move.
Yeah, yeah.
Where?
But most of it, to be honest, comes back to my knowledge of how the body functions.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be a very good strength and conditioning coach. So I learnt as much as I could about the body. So when I look at a player and how they move, I look at their body. Right? It doesn't necessarily come from the thousands of hours of watching players, you know, because anyone can do that. But if you don't know how the body should function biomechanically for, you know, injury prevention, for the most efficiency, for the most power output. You know, we discussed hip stabilizers and hips, how to use your hips and your glutes better when moving.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't understand that element of the body, then you'll never be able to fix the movement. You know, so team movement as well is like, and footwork for me is the combination of the human body, how it functions, and the tactics of tennis, and pulled into one. And so when you combine that, you create a very efficient, powerful moving tennis player that plays tactically very well. Right? So yeah, when I look at a human playing, I'm looking at their body. I can look at a tennis player and I can tell you their injuries that they may have had, or their potential injuries that they could have, just because of, you know, the way they move. And I've seen a lot, which helps.
Yeah, of course. So then maybe there are some parts in so the tactical side is really interesting for me, combined with the footwork.
Yeah.
An example how we did it was, let's say I'm surfing from the left side as a lefty wide, and then being ready to recover from that serve and play with the forehand.
Yeah.
But how, like, maybe that's a bad explanation of how it works, but maybe a little bit to the right direction, but how would you explain that, or got some examples of how that combination of tactical and footwork works?
Yeah. So for instance, you've got to look at the game style of someone.
Yeah.
You know, so you're a forehand dominant player. You know, that would mean I need to teach you how to run around to get your forehand, you know, because that's going to be your attacking and your best element. But you've got to look at someone like John Isner. You're going to train him to move different than Schwartzman, right?
Yeah.
You know, Schwartzman is all about being able to track balls in many different directions. Isner's more about an aggressive game style, right? So the footwork that you train each player will depend on their body shape and their style of game. You know, for instance, like a short, you know, a medium ball with a lot of spin, an aggressive player might take that on and hold their court position, right? Whilst a smaller person who's fitter, who likes playing the grind game, may go back and rip a forehand or something, heavy and deep. But understanding body type, style of game, is very important to teaching movement patterns.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to work with John Isner. Of course you want John Isner to move good, but you would approach the training differently than with Schwartzman.
Yeah.
probably work on all elements, but so I can imagine that with the John Isner, it would be focused on still the serve and then the +1.
Yeah.
And just making sure that's perfect.
Yeah. And and return. The biggest one for him would also be return +1.
Yeah.
Right. And super aggressive, because no one's going to break him. But if he can snag a few good returns and a few good first strikes, gets up love 30.
Break.
Yeah. He just needs to build a bit of pressure, because if you're the other guy down the other end, you're like, oh, I can't get broken.
That's
because I'm never breaking him.
That's a mental part.
Yeah, and so, with the Isner, like short, sharp, high intensity, very few movements, 3 ball strikes. Even if I was going to do like drills with him, I'd be doing 3 or 4 ball strikes. That's it. With Schwartzman, it might be 6 to 10.
Yeah.
You know, because again, I'm training different energy systems too. That's a whole nother thing. They're training the energy systems, the fitness of those in a squad. Like I said to you, like imagine training at that capacity all the time, your fitness will improve.
Yeah.
But someone like John Isner, you don't want to burn his body out, because tall people have tall ligaments, tall muscles, unstable joints, more unstable joints.
So he will, by doing that approach, which is not does not fit his game style.
Yeah.
But when you do it, you will have more injuries.
Yeah, you damage him.
Yeah. That's interesting too. So how do you approach that when it's in a group? You've got some Schwartzman, Isner, Anderson, and Dane Sweeney.
Yeah, so you can modify it by he puts out of a corner, and you create the others to move more.
Yeah.
Or you for every 2 of their reps he does 1, or every 3 of their reps he does 1. But when you get a guy, depends on what they're doing, you know. But he was a college guy, so he would have done sessions where they hit a lot of balls, you know. Maybe. He went to a very wealthy school, so they had a lot of resources. Or maybe they did after he was there, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to try and modify it, or else you'll damage him. Yeah.
All right. That's a nice example of how that works. And with Kyrgios, you work with him as well. Is he still, he got a big serve?
Yeah. Always has.
It's massive. I think that story of what you told with Luke's podcast of him serving at the tee, saying like, doesn't matter grass or
clay.
The clay. That was awesome. But that's still a different player than John Isner, of course.
Yeah. No, we did a lot of footwork with him, and I did a bit. I did it quite a bit. But the guy who I developed footwork with, David Briggs, he did a lot of work with Nick as well. So I got to credit to Dave Briggs, because he did a lot of footwork with Nick, and I did less than him. I still did some, but when we looked at Nick, we worked on all the fundamentals of movement, because he was only 14 and 15 when I worked with him. So we were still building the fundamentals of everything. What
are the fundamentals of movement?
Well, I could tell you all of them, but that's part of my education, so I don't want to give it all away. But it's basically your ability to move to the ball. Yeah. So splitting, turning, accelerating in and behind the ball, movement through the shot, right? So which comes down to sort of what I was chatting about with hip load and hip drive. Yeah. But there's like speed variations, height variations, and understanding those, and then out of the shot, in all different directions. And then you get a little more specialised with return of serve, and volleys and transitioning. But understanding, like I get quite in depth with it. I have 10 fundamental movement patterns for footwork, baseline footwork, broken down into structure, but within that's concepts. So we were chatting about this earlier, training concepts, not manoeuvres. A lot of footwork coaches, and there's some amazing footwork coaches, don't get me wrong, but they teach manoeuvres, and they'll have all these manoeuvres, but when you're on court, you can't remember manoeuvres. No. It's like trying to train someone just to remember a test, to remember the answers. Whilst if you train someone to understand the concepts of a question, you know, of whatever it is, physics or whatever, you know, we related it back to the concept of spin. You know, spin's a concept, but once you teach the athlete about all the different spins and the concept of it, they can adapt and use it on court in any different situations. And that's the same with footwork. When you teach those concepts within the structure of footwork, they'll understand it in many different scenarios. And that's why I created, Dave and I've added a lot more to it just because I learnt more and more. I knew when I was young, and I've learnt more and more and more. They all link with the body, and they all work in a structured way, like one happens straight after the other. and they're all adaptable because they're concepts that you'll understand. But yeah, I'd love to go more in depth, but I'm creating an education course.
Yeah, of course.
Very specific to help coaches with that.
And with that part, it's also probably the best way to learn those concepts is by seeing it.
Yeah.
So with going back to Kyrgios, where there's some parts where I always, when I look at his game, I was like, it's always looks a little bit lazy.
Yes.
But I was wondering, what are parts you think he should still improve?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what are the parts maybe it doesn't look great, but you're like, that's still great. He's doing a fantastic job there.
Return to serve, still there. You watch him, worked on one step forward, wide split, and then react. Still does that awesome. Okay. He's got a little sloppy with some of his movement, but his width and height, he could get lower and wider, I think. His run around forehand, he gets a bit face on. I'd love to see him turn more. And if you watch him in his younger years when he played Rafa, 19, 20 and stuff, you'll see a lot of this stuff. The width out of his split, his turning.
It was better back then.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, he suffered a lot of injuries too later on, which may have affected his ability to move. You know, he had problems with his knees and stuff. But I said this on the podcast with Nelson, that I'd love to get a hold of Nick and just sharpen him up with his footwork and movement, because I know how well he can move. He's a better athlete than people give him credit for. He's actually a pretty good athlete. But yeah, his width, his deceleration after he hits the ball. So after he hits, he stands a bit tall, and his recovery is compromised. I'd love to see him get wider and recover better. But he's just so skillful, and he serves so big. You know, he can sort of hang his hat a bit too much on it. Just, you know what I mean? But yeah, his return to serve's still there. He's still, you watch him, just nice and wide split.
That's maybe also his problem of being so talented, so skillful with the racket and the ball, and that's not something that he must use the footwork that much. Like he's great at it, but probably that's the problem for him.
Yeah. Well, you look at someone like Bernard Tomic too. Unbelievable hands, unbelievable power generation, terrible footwork, and they both perceive the game exceptionally well.
Yeah. So that's why they are there.
Yeah. So when I was at uni, I studied reactive agility. The two elements are your ability to change direction and perceive the game. So basically, think speed, agility, and your ability to perceive the game is how you become, how your reactive agility is. And tennis is all reactive agility. Yeah. Split, you got to perceive, split and move. Perceive, split and move. Yeah. Right? But they do the perceiving really well, but they need to work on the movement. Yeah. But some players, like I've had unbelievable athletes, like someone like Benny Mitchell, scary athlete, you know, so physical, so like talented, explosive, but maybe didn't read the game as well as those guys. And I have a theory on it. Like Nick he'll admit it, he was a chubbier kid, so he didn't move as well. So he had to read the game. He was a product of his environment. He had to read the game well. You know, and Bernard just played so much that I think he just developed the skill of reading it.
Already, he was playing a lot.
I do at 11 or 12. He was doing 6-7 hour days.
Ooh, yeah, crazy. I was about to ask you that about, are there some good and bad examples on tour? And do you think, what do you think? What's your favorite player based on movement?
Yep.
And what's the player you think in the top 20? You think is lacking behind on that part?
Oh, you got to move well to be good at tennis now.
Yeah,
so they all move really good.
Yeah.
Like you have to move well to be good on court. Who's the best? Novak. Novak, from a technical perspective, is outstanding. Top 20, he could get better at the movement. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Very difficult. If you name another player, people probably know.
Oh God. See, that's the thing now. Like, and this is why I think footwork's so important. Everyone in the top 100 moves well. Everyone in the top 200 moves well. They all move really, really well. The guys who maybe don't move that well are the big guys, but they can't move as well. Yeah. You know, those like the Karloviches and the John Isners of the world. Yeah. Top 20, I'd have to have a good look. Like Sinner moves unbelievable. Yeah. He's technically a beautiful mover. Yeah. So efficient. Themen's lightning.
Yeah, and I saw on Sinner too that sliding.
Yeah.
That part, that was on a hard court. He's just sliding but still balanced, and every shot, and just it's so easy for him. I'm thinking about Felix, who is also really
hell of an
really-
athlete.
Yeah, but still he played the final now, but he's struggling
Yeah.
in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
Got an injury too, I think, but that's a player where maybe the tactical part,
yeah,
because technically it looks good,
yeah.
but there are some tactical parts and decision-making parts that
Yeah.
probably needs to improve.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I would love to work with someone like that because you've got this unbelievable athletic base. Then you're just linking the tactics up with movement,
Yeah.
which is footwork, really.
Mm.
It's not speed ladders or
Yeah.
fast feet. That's foot speed. That's not footwork. Yeah, I mean, he would probably be a good example. I think Taylor Fritz could probably do a bit more. Even though I know his trainer, and his trainer's so good. So good. And he does move well, but if you compare him to a Demonar or a Rude or a Rune,
Or Tommy Paul, I think
yeah,
is really good.
yeah, he moves well too for a guy like maybe Fritz, but he's an unbelievable player too. You know, you're talking about these half percenters, but I know his trainer's so good. Wolf's a bloody good trainer, so I rate his stuff. But Fritz maybe could move a little better.
Yeah, cool. And for the recreational players, are there some top mistakes they are making and some quick fixes for them?
Yeah, just get lower and wider. You know, everyone says it, wider base, but don't bend your knees. Drop your hips back and down, and stay on the balls of your feet. All right. Yeah, so always split step, and we spoke about this. The timing of the landing should be just before or on contact of your opponent.
So on top of the hop is what somebody told me. Like when you
Yeah.
make a picture of it and you're hitting the ball, like you see that I am in the air.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, because then you get to take care of what we call our plyometric or our elastic. You get to you use your connective tissue to be explosive. Fedsy did it unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Fedsy was super explosive through his
Yeah, so
connective
Federer.
tissue. Yeah, unbelievable. You are Federer. But yeah, so he didn't. This is I can get so in depth with movement too. Like Federer wasn't all about muscle and strength. He was very plyometric and explosive through his connective tissue. Right. So he's like Monfils or someone like that, super explosive. And they stand a little taller, but they can use their kinetic energy. Someone like Andy Murray, you know, was strength. You know, he's not as plyometric, but his movement was still fantastic. But he was more of a strength-based athlete. So this is where it comes down to like genetics and body makeup and how it sort of links into how they move too.
And does that mean that a guy like Monfils should do more work on the strength side and Andy more on the plyometric side?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because a lot of plyometrics too rely on really strong connective tissue, like tendons and fascia, connective tissue. But the best way to strengthen that is by doing strength training, but not muscle building. Low reps, so anywhere between 3 and 6 reps for anywhere between 3 and 6 sets.
Okay.
So you build strength but not size. So you don't break into what we call hypertrophy, which is where you're too bulky and slow.
Yeah.
Because tennis players are lean and explosive and fit.
Yeah. And so that's another question from Eric from Instagram, and his question was, how many reps and sets for plyo and agility sessions?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because people say I'm doing a plyometric sessions and they do way too many things. When you talk about plyometrics, they talk about contacts. So that's every time you contact the
And
ground.
maybe for a lot of people, explain what plyometric is.
Okay.
I think that's somebody that came across in my journey 4 years ago,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of amateur players don't know what it is.
So plyometrics is very specific in the fact that it is about landing, lengthening the tendon, and then rapidly shortening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
What is happening in
it
the
has to
split
be,
step?
yeah, in the split step. They call it a stretch shortening cycle. So stretch and then shortening cycle, right? And it happens with like maximum force with minimum time on the ground. So the less time you spend on the ground. Now, if you don't react fast enough, then technically it's not really plyometrics. It moves in towards power, right? But even low grade, we call them low grade plyometrics, is like skipping. That's low grade. High grade, most tennis players probably you need to have a lot of strength in that tendon to do it, which is like full plot, like bounding. Which you can do. And I have in my programs, in my Team Movement Elite membership, I have a plyometric session, which is based on bounds. But when it comes to you can have, for plyometrics, I would go 3 to 5 sets, but only 6 to 8 contacts.
Okay. That are the reps.
And that, reps,
Yeah.
which trains very specifically speed. If you go for like 15, 20 reps, you're actually starting to move into power endurance, or you're not going to get the response of plyometrics that you're after.
And the rest part during
Long rests, plyometrics, high maximal intensity long rests.
Always so boring.
Yeah, it is. Plyometrics is boring.
So something you did here was, let's say, feels like skate jumping.
Oh, the skater hops, skater jumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the plyo skaters,
That's an exercise.
Yeah.
Right? So you're jumping from baseline or singles line to doubles line to the net. But when you jump forward enough, maybe you did 8 jumps, that's enough, not more.
Yeah.
And then resting for?
They say with plyos, depends how much time you got, the longer the better. But I don't encourage, I would encourage, see, I'm talking traditional plyometrics from strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
If you want to improve your explosiveness on court, we spoke about this, train with more intensity. Train with greater intensity and you will improve your explosiveness. I'll call it explosiveness, right? Speed agility is also awesome for building up you can call it plyometric if you want, but it's more that explosiveness, that power, that ability to change direction really rapidly. And speed agility, you got more reps, so more contacts or more change of directions. You can do the same sets, but your reps are higher. And the multiple change of the semi-exercise. I've got, if they go onto my membership, I think there's 9 or 10 fitness sessions, and then there's a heap of speed agility sessions. And they're good, they work.
That's nice. We will add that in the description.
Oh yeah, the link, I appreciate it.
So that's good. All right, so last question to benefit myself as much as I can. So I've seen me play tennis now.
Yes.
And there's work to do, of course, but what should I be doing? If you can guide me.
Yeah, I would be training at higher intensity whenever you're on court. Right? I think you have the capacity to move very well, but you need to make it a habit by doing it all the time. I think you're just not in the habit of training at a higher intensity and explosive, and that's something that you got to keep yourself accountable. And like we were saying before, every player has to keep themselves accountable and hold their own standards.
That's so good, yeah.
But I would say you need to train with greater intensity and spend time when you're training, not thinking about how you hit the ball, but thinking about how you move.
Check.
And I think if you do that, especially, and stay wider and get your ass back. Get your butt back.
That's part of it then.
Yeah.
So, and off court, are there some, also like, not for me, but also for the people watching, of course, like, what are the stuff you're like, do that? At least if you're doing something. So people here, they are having their job, right?
Yeah.
They are not the pros. They can't work out all day. What if they got 30 minutes a day?
30
what
minutes.
should they do?
If you're a desk worker or someone who spends a lot of time sitting out, I would actually say flexibility, mobility is one way to really prevent injury, to be more mobile on court and to just feel generally better, especially when you're sitting a lot. I would say start the day getting on trigger balls and foam rollers, or finish the day, watching TV, you're sitting down, get a trigger ball, trigger off your hips, get a foam roller, roll your thoracic, roll your calves. Good. Mobility and stretching is actually good for the well-being. So for recreational, it would be do that. For someone who's aspiring to be a bit better tennis player, injury prevention is the most important thing. So doing a injury prevention program is, you can do it at home. It needs very little equipment and you'll keep your body in check so you can keep playing tennis and enjoying it. A lot of people can't get to a gym and spend the amount of time doing a strength program, or they don't know what to do anyway. But if you go to a physio or you can join my program, either or, that you get a program to prevent any injuries that are common in tennis. That way you can keep enjoying the sport your whole life.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing,
And so combine that with being playing at a high intensity when you're on court, you will make the progress.
Yeah, you will improve for sure. But ultimately, if you look after your body, if you're a tennis player, whatever you do, recreation or not, if you look after your body, you'll be able to play tennis for a long time, pain-free. And I love tennis, and I love people playing tennis. And most of the time, you're going to ask someone, "Oh, why aren't you playing?" "Oh, I got a bit of a dodgy knee, or my shoulder's sore." So they don't get to enjoy the sport. But if you look after your body a bit better, you can enjoy tennis for your life. Because it is sport for life. It's one of those sports you can play, up until you're older.
But people aren't doing that because they are not
Helping their body.
helping their body.
Yeah. So
Good.
it's important.
Nice. Thanks, man.
No worries.
And you've got your Instagram. That's also Team Movement, right?
Team Movement Tennis.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for watching, Alex. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, man.
And
I loved it.
see you in the next one. Bedankt voor het kijken. Ik hoop dat je er veel van geleerd hebt, dat je ervan hebt genoten en vooral ook echt wat van hebt geleerd. Vergeet dus niet te abonneren. Het is altijd heel erg waardevol om dat te doen, omdat we op die manier ook de journey steeds beter kunnen doorpakken, grotere gasten kunnen spreken en ook de productie omhoog kunnen brengen. En ik ga ook gewoon door. Ik ga ook gewoon door met het boeken van progressie. Dat kan je ook zien in de YouTube-serie Hugo's Journey, waarin ik ook met Alex de baan op ben gegaan. Dus ga naar die video op zoek. En dan zeg ik voor nu genoeg praatjes, op naar progressie.